Hello, ladies. Welcome back to Menopause Reimagined. Today, we are going to be talking about a topic that is unfortunately very common for many of us. We know that according to our research on anxiety, that so many of us are stressed. I mean, truthfully, living the lifestyles that we're living in today's day and age, chronic stress has become such a big issue for us. And as we go into perimenopause and menopause, we are unable to cope with it as well as we were before. And for those of you who had anxiety before going into this phase of life, you might find that it is exacerbated. And then I know many of you have told me and shared with me over the last many years is that you've never experienced anxiety, but yet it is so rampant now. So if you have anxiety, if you're experiencing it, whether it's chronic or just once in a while, you're going to love today's podcast. But before I bring in our expert, I'm going to share a little bit about me. If you're new to my podcast, hello, I'm Andrea. I'm a nutritionist for 20 plus years. I'm a published menopause researcher. I'm also a menopause educator, and I'm the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that helps to empower you to take control of your health and symptoms as you move through perimenopause and menopause. And as a reminder, we have an incredible line of supplements for women in this phase of life. But just so you know, it's not only for women in perimenopause and menopause. Your partners, your family members can take them as well. So for example, we have Fiber Us, which is a soluble fiber, has 6.5 grams of fiber per scoop. It's awesome. No taste, no smell, no grit, and it mixes into anything hot or cold. So that can be taken by anyone over the age of 9 months. We have our Thymoquin, our berberine, our Sleep Us, our magnesium, which is incredible and our #1 selling product. So go check them out. Our full line of products can be found at wearemorphus.com. You just click on the shop button. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Melissa Saunders. She's a chiropractor and expert in mind-body alignment, dedicated to helping women reconnect with their whole selves. As the host of the Be Inspired Mama podcast and founder of Best Friends Book Nook, she creates spaces for women to explore self-connection and personal growth without adding more to their to-do lists. Gotta love that. Her passion for self-care and alignment deepened after being diagnosed in 2017 with a neurological Lyme disease, meningitis, and encephalitis while juggling work and motherhood. This challenge became a gift, leading her to discover the power of small, intentional shifts that create real transformation. It also sparked her obsession with understanding the female brain, how our brainwaves, hormones, and nervous system interact, and how simple science-backed tools can regulate the mind, break the stress cycle, and guide us home to our whole selves. Through her platforms, Dr. Melissa helps women shift from disconnection to alignment, embracing both their ego and true self to create a life of ease, confidence, and joy. Now, here's Dr. Melissa Saunders. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Melissa.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Andrea.
Well, it's extremely timely, and the topic is really important because as we were talking before we went live, some of my research that I've really wanted to focus on comes, we talk about the physical symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. It's very known. A lot of people, we talk about hot flashes and night sweats, but the mental health component, the spiritual component of these symptoms aren't talked about as much. And one of our surveys that we had published in December of 2024 in the journal Menopause was on the mental health component and specifically on anxiety. And we know that as we go into perimenopause and menopause, women are more anxious. 66% of us are more anxious than we were before, and we're less able to cope with it. And I mean, even talking from firsthand, I mean, I know someone like myself who had anxiety for so much of her life. When I went into menopause, it got worse. It got triggered a lot easier. And I have to work really hard at keeping my nervous system in check and trying to calm the anxiety. Now, I'm not new to it, but because I'm not new to it, I actually had a lot of tips and tricks throughout the years, but I know so many of us are suffering with it. So I'm excited to talk to you today because you are going to give us some advice, some tools that we could use to help if you have anxiety, to help calm our nervous system. So why don't we start with what got you into this?
Yes, and I'm really, really excited for this information. And one thing I just want to start with for the woman who's maybe just starting to listen to this and perhaps in that state of anxiousness or overwhelm, the tools that we're going to talk about today are ones that you can use in the micro moments of your life that we actually have access to. So you're going to walk away from this conversation with not another to do or, some great information that could be really empowering, but can also be kind of overwhelming. Uh, this is going to feel easy and truly accessible for the women that not only you and I are speaking to in this conversation, but for the women that we all are. And
Mm,
so I'm really excited for this conversation, and I'm so grateful for all of the information that you've published because this is such an important time for this conversation, as you know.
mhm,
So, my background is a chiropractor. I like to say I'm a nervous system specialist and alignment guide. And so I no longer work hands-on in the practice. I did so for about 16 years, and we still run and have a large wellness center in northern New Jersey. Um, and, there were a couple things that kind of piqued my curiosity as I was working with a lot of women. Like my patients were mostly women in pregnancy and their children. And then as their children were getting older, I would see them through high school. And, as a chiropractor, we see health through the lens of our body can heal itself.
mhm,
And I was working in the practice on the physical adjustment, right? Adjusting the physical health. My job as a chiropractor is to find anything that interferes with our body's ability to heal itself and to remove it. And then let the body do its job. Let the body do what it does best and self heal and self regulate through the nervous system. And I was working with my patients on their chemical health, right? So through detox and working with them on nutrition, which I know you love, cleaning out any chemical interference. But what I started to notice, Andrea, is I wasn't really working on that emotional component.
mhm,
And I started to ask myself some really interesting questions because I'd have these women come in. I worked with some like pretty high power men as well. Our practice is in a commuter town. So I get some of like the top New York City lawyers and Wall Street guys. And I'm like, why are my moms and my women more stressed than they are?
hmm,
And so I started to ask the question, if we're self healing and self regulating, and I know as a chiropractor that the part of us that's responsible for that healing is the nervous system,
mhm.
what if the nervous system needs an adjustment? And so I kept kind of like asking myself that question. And then I had a situation that felt like the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. I had my rock bottom, and it turned out to be the greatest blessing because it's what has set me on this trajectory. And I get tunnel vision when I get curious of how we can impact our nervous system.
You know, and I want you to share your story with us because I know that story and Lyme disease, and I know you had some other issues as well. I know that plays a big part into why you're doing what you're doing. But sometimes when we do hit rock bottom, and I have hit it a couple times myself, that's when the only place really you can go is up from there, right? So talk about the up for you.
So skip over the story and go to the up.
Well, no, I want to hear all of it, the
Okay.
story, and then what led you to that up.
Yeah. So, okay. So I was, like a lot of us women, I think our high performance women are rushing women, the women that are so passionate about doing it all. Like I am very much that woman. And so I was working in the practice, had a full schedule. I know as a healthy woman that I need to build my muscle tone. So I'm like waking up at 5 a.m. I'm hitting CrossFit classes. I'm flipping tires while my body is like still waking up. Homeschooling our three children, going to the full,
Wow.
full day of patients, coming home, wanting to put my feet up, and then I can't, right? I have to cook dinner. I have to do all these things. So
Yeah.
like looking back, there are so many moments throughout the day that I'm curious if the listeners have experienced this where my inner voice was saying things like, I need a break. I need to not wake up at 5 a.m. and hit that CrossFit class. But I was overriding it with messages like, but this is when I have time. This is when I can fit that in and this is important. So instead of listening to
Yeah.
you, I'm going to over caffeinate and push through.
Mhm.
I think we've become experts at quieting that inner wisdom, which is going to change from this conversation, um, and pushing through with productivity. And
Mhm.
so, I'd like to say I had a lot of whispers coming through. At the end of the day, I need a break. I need to sit down. It's been a long day. And in quieting that voice, well, I got to cook dinner for my family. There's nothing I can access that can give me a break. So I'm going to choose to have this glass of wine instead. And I'm going to kind of quiet you down and feel like I'm doing something for me. But I started to get curious, like maybe there's other things I can do for me. It didn't change anything. And my nervous system hit overdrive. And, I'm really big on the concept of, we can fill our bucket with stress so much, and then it's that final drop that threw us over. And my final drop was a tick bite paired with mold toxicity.
Mm.
So I got a double whammy, but what's really important in hindsight is that I had set up my nervous system to just have some little influence and be thrown over the cliff.
Yeah.
And so the way it presented in me, a very happy, social, hard working woman who's very connected to my three children, I didn't remember their names.
Mm.
And I could get teary. It was really hard. I got lost on the way to our office, which I had literally built with my husband and gone to every day. It's 2 miles from my home. I couldn't find my way. And I told nobody. I did what so many of us do when we're struggling. I told nobody. And I was just like, something's not right, like it's stressful, but something's different. And eventually I had to, and I went in and I got tested and we figured out what it was. And, luckily we had the tools to get me out of the fire of Lyme disease and mold toxicity. But I needed, the smoke alarm. Like I knew I was just going to get back into the situation that allowed me to get sick in the first place. And so that was 8 years ago ish. And so, my story, my mess has really become my message. And what's really cool is I've realized that all those symptoms that we have of anxiety and stress and chaos are really our body speaking to us viscerally. And when we can tune in and listen, and there are easy tools that we can use, that's what's really important. We can completely change how we feel and function. And for the woman in perimenopause, I'm now 44, so I'm just kind of like at the brink of it. I think we can look at how we start to feel in this phase as like something's wrong with us. Or we can start to look at it like this is our time to be really discerning. This is our time where the things that worked in our 30s, we don't have room for anymore. And this is really where we get to step into wisdom and boundaries and be like, you know what? My body whispered for so long and now it's screaming and I'm done. And like, how freaking cool, right? I know we're all in this place together.
So first of all, you're using one of my favorite words to use is discerning, because being discerning in all aspects of our life is really critical. And especially as we go into perimenopause and menopause, we need to be discerning with what we're eating, how we're living, how we're regulating our nervous system, just people in our lives. So I love that you use that word, and that really resonates with me. And like you're saying, and it's so true, Melissa, like so many of us, and women in general, we tend to, I mean, we're the caregivers in the home. We are, and I'm not saying, and I don't want to take away from our husbands, our partners, from the men at all, but it tends to be that we take on a lot, right? And I was listening to a podcast the other day. There's this woman, her name is Rachel, and she was saying she's a little bit older than we are, and she was saying how she still believes, and she said that it might be against the grain and it might be something that people won't agree with her, but she was saying how she believes that women do take on a lot more than their partners. And kind of what you were saying is that we have our, if you have kids, you have your kids to take care of. You have, and our generation, we have our parents to take care of. Like that sandwich generation, especially as Gen Xers, we have a lot on our plate. And eventually what can happen is that, like you said, we're pushing down the voice inside of us that it's like, well, what about us? And you're right. Like, and your example you gave about alcohol is so great and so spot on. It's like, well, I'm going to have that glass of wine because that's doing something for me, right? Even though it may not be the best thing for us, but it's something for me because we want to do something for ourselves, right? So I think what you're saying is very important. And I know that it's resonating with our audience. So talk about now, what can we do? So now we heard your story, which is, I think a lot of us will really identify with. So what got you from that place of, okay, everything spilled over and now I'm in this situation to here's what we can do to help, what you can do to help yourself and then subsequently everyone else?
Yeah, I love this conversation. I think we've come from a place of like, if we zoom out, I think we all know that self-care is really important, right? I think we can all agree on that.
And it's not selfish.
It's not selfish, it's self-with. I like to say it's self-with.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. I
why,
love it.
why were we told at some point that like, or it was role modeled for us that women are supposed to be selfless?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
words are powerful. What?
Yes. No, I agree.
But so if we can get past that our self-care is not selfish and take it one step further, let's all just take a minute and like think of self-care. And let's think of like what comes to mind when we think of that phrase and word. And think of how many of our things that we think of for self-care are outside in.
Mm.
They're external appointments that
Hmm.
we've got to add to our already full schedule.
Hmm.
They are things that cost a lot of time and money. They are things that, if you have children at home, it's like you get done with your workday and now it's, well, do I go do this thing or am I with my kids? And it's this constant push and pull that we have so much of in our lives. And then when we can't fit it in, we don't blame the system of self-care that's extremely outdated. We guilt and shame ourselves.
Hmm.
And so this is all about putting our power on the external, right? Because we do it with our self-care and we also do it a lot when we experience the discomfort of anxiety or stress. Where do we go? We go out. We
Hmm.
go to our emails. We go to a dopamine hit. We go to our work, our busyness. It's busyness, it's distraction. But it's not our fault. That's all we've been taught. And so this is about teaching ourselves to come home in those moments. And it's really, really quite simple. It's not easy, but it can be. It just takes time. It doesn't even take a lot of time. It takes the willingness to practice because these are micro tools. I say I love microdosing. And when I talk about microdosing, I'm not talking about plant medicine. There's time and a place. But this is microdosing connection. And these are literally like 30-second things that I do amidst the chaos when my kids are fighting, when it's dinner is burning and there's homework. Like these are the tools that help us come home to ourselves in those moments. And this is the new self-care movement because we've been following an outdated system that just doesn't work anymore.
Hmm. So what are some of those things? And I
So
like, by the way, that they're easy and 30-second tools because, again, like you were saying in the beginning, we just don't want to be overwhelmed with something else to add to our to-do list. So, okay,
yes.
so let's dive in.
Okay. So for so long, I would hear as a high performance woman, breath work, gratitude, journaling, all these things. And I'm like, I want to speak to that woman that maybe has heard those things. And she's like, that's great, but like, I gotta go. Like, give me something that works. So I was that woman. So I'm not gonna just say breath and gratitude and all those things. I think we've been inundated with that. I want to speak from the nervous system. And so I need to take a minute to like help us remember what that is. So our nervous system is our hardwiring. Our nervous system is how we see the world and how we respond to it. This dictates everything in our life. This dictates how we feel, how we react, not how we respond. This is reactive, is our nervous system. And it's very black and white. And the question it asks is, am I safe? And so it sees everything through the lens of, am I gonna die? Am I gonna die? Do I need to run or am I safe? And thank God for our nervous system because it has kept us alive as a species for thousands of years, but it is an outdated hardwiring and we need to retrain it. And we can. The other way our hardwiring has been trained is through our environment, through our mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, what we've watched as babies and as growing kids in our environment. There's something in our brain called mirror neurons. I'm sure you're familiar. And this is how literally if you smile at a baby, the baby smiles back. And so you think about, many of us were blessed with beautiful environments and beautiful homes. And so through our mirror neurons, we learned how to calm ourselves amidst the chaos. And some of us maybe weren't so lucky and grew up in environments that were chaotic or our parents were very stressed, rightfully so. And so we watched that and that became our hardwiring. And so this is really about taking that understanding And then realizing, throughout our day when we go into anxiety or stress or chaos, like, is our survival literally threatened? And I'd be willing to bet that 90% of the time it's not. It's that crappy email. I'll say crappy instead of swearing. It's
Oh, you
that.
could swear. It's fine.
Sometimes it's just like, that's the only word that's
I
appropriate.
don't mind. You could swear.
Okay. And we will get into this, I promise, but this concept is really important. It's that person that cuts you off, and we literally go into survival mode.
Hmm.
And so it's meant to be like a quick visual of our environment to go into, the physiology that would allow us to run or fight. And then it's supposed to reset when we're safe. But that doesn't
It
happen,
doesn't
right?
happen because it's constantly being triggered and stimulated. So that chronic stress doesn't allow us to reset.
Yeah. And so I think now people have like an understanding of that. We're going to be talking about everything through the lens of the nervous system. And I love to use the word alignment, maybe because I'm a chiropractor. But let's call the default state of like feeling great. Let's call that alignment. And our goal is to always be able to come home to alignment. And we'll determine what that looks like for each person because it's individualized. But the first really important step, and I think most powerful step, is to determine what is your current state of alignment. Because subconsciously, you're pulling yourself back into this state and wondering why we always feel stressed or anxious. And so I'm going to walk you through what I call the roadmap, and it's our brain waves. And it's this rhythm that we go through throughout the day that's really important. It's like gears in a car. So we need to start in first and second gear, not in third. But many of us are going right into third gear by hopping on our emails and checking our phones. We're living in that third gear all the time. And there's a lot of magic that happens in gear 1 and 2. And so what I want to start with is asking yourself a question. Like, if I were to make a word, to say a word that's like my general state that I feel a lot of the time that maybe I don't like, what is that word? So I don't know if you want to share. I can share mine. If
Yeah, you go ahead. You share yours.
I would say mine in general in the past, and like the hard wiring that could pull me, would be stress and like busyness.
Hmm, interesting.
How about, do you care to share? You don't have to.
No, I would say, I mean, I don't know if I have, yeah, stress definitely, I would say would be mine as well. And I think not so much busyness, but I think regulation. I mean, that's why I like this conversation because for me, I find it, I'm a very, I kind of always joke around that I'm like this type AAA. Before menopause, I was a type AAA personality. And it was like I had to work hard and I had to work all the time. And if I wasn't working hard and I wasn't working all the time, then I wasn't getting anything done. And I wasn't going to be like, so I would think maybe the busyness of my brain, that's probably a good one, like in terms of like thinking it through. But after menopause, I feel like I've like instead I'm not a a type AAA personality anymore, but I'm still type A for sure, just because that's who I am. But I'm able to quiet my mind a lot more now and just be in the stillness and not have to be. My new mantra is work smarter, not harder.
Mm.
So I think could the word change? Like, can
100%. Yeah. And
okay,
that's the goal. That's what we'll walk through. Yeah. I
okay.
love that. And
So
you're,
yeah,
you're speaking from a wisdom from a woman who spent some time in these wise years, you're speaking from a woman. Can I ask how old you are?
yeah, 55. Very proud of my age. Yeah.
So you are the women that, is a little bit coming before me and teaching us, right? And then we're teaching the women that are gearing up in their 30s to be like, start listening, pay attention. Right?
Well, lots of experience and but thank you. That's great to hear. But yeah, no, a lot of I've done a lot of self-work as well, and I'm always doing self-work, right? So for me, and that's why I when we started talking, I'm like, oh, this is so my language because I love talking about the spiritual aspect of things, but I don't talk about it that often. But to me, it feeds my soul and it's who I am. So I'm so happy that you're talking about it today on this podcast. And I just need to talk about it more too. So thank you for even like reminding me how this is who I am and the work that I've done, but yet I need to bring it more to the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, I'm so glad, we'll get back to what we're talking on in a minute, but we started with, there's so much anxiety. It's like we are being bombarded with knowledge and we have forgotten as women, we are highly intuitive. That is our greatest gift. And that is how women have been for generations before us, We are cyclical, we are rhythmic, and we've forgotten how to tap in. And the brain waves, my favorite tool to talk about is how we get back to that.
Mm.
For any woman who's familiar with cycle syncing, right? And as much as we can, living in alignment with our hormonal cycle throughout the month. It doesn't mean like that during our luteal phase, when we feel like tuning in, that we put everything to the side, because we often can't. But it becomes our permission slip to be like, well, not in this phase, I'm gonna clear my schedule a little bit, or I'm gonna sleep in because that's hormonally what my body wants.
Hmm.
And it also reminds you that there's not something wrong with you. Our luteal phase, for those of us who still have a cycle, is our most intuitive time. So no wonder we crave going inward. So what starts to happen when you have this information, not only do you no longer think something's wrong with you, you start to understand that we are rhythmic as women. And when we can lean into our rhythms, we live in flow and not force. And
Love that.
that's what this knowledge of the brainwaves does. So when we take that word of like our maybe yucky state of alignment, like mine being stress, for someone it might be a feeling of anxiety or like chaos, you start to think about in the morning, this is your first like homework, in the morning before your eyes even wake up and our brains come online, and I don't mean on the internet, but like online, you're in a beautiful brainwave state called theta.
There you
This
go.
is
Yeah.
year one.
That's
Theta
awesome.
is, I love to personify the brainwaves because they're these incredible women and they are our dream team. And Theta is, she is a daydreamer.
Oh,
Theta is
love
the
it.
insight to our intuition. And if you ever hear someone say, I get my best ideas in the shower, or I get my best ideas on a long ride, that's Theta. And when
Mm.
we spend some time with our daydreamer girlfriend, we become way more intuitive without even trying. And so it's really important for the action step in Theta, the first thing in the morning, to spend time in gear one. And I'm not talking about a 1 hour practice, because if I heard one more man tell me that, like in the biohacking space, have this 1 hour morning routine.
Oh yeah, no, exactly.
I can't. I
Yeah,
can't.
no, not when you have small kids, not when, yeah, no, it's just not.
Unrealistic.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
simply, we need to start in gear one, which is
Yeah.
Theta.
Mhm.
Aim for 2 minutes. Great if you can get 5, amazing if you can get 15. Your action step in Theta is to listen. And the thing you do not want to do in Theta is traditional household lighting or lighting from your screens. So, like, I don't go on my phone in the morning, but if I had to, I've got a triple click red light filter. So, I think we're all fans of like red lights and things like that. You can literally get red light bulbs on Amazon, but literally just lay in your bed and listen. And what's really important is to start to listen to what are the questions that you're asking yourself before your day even starts. Because there is a part of the brain, if I could get a little science nerdy here for a minute,
Yeah, please.
it's called our reticular activating system. RAS for short, filter. It's our filter. And so in any moment, we are bombarded with sensory information, lights, sounds, texture. There's too much. And so our brain literally has to filter it down. And the way that it knows how to filter it down is by the questions that you're asking your nervous system. And we do this subconsciously. So if you've ever like decided, you know what, I'm in my fun phase of life, I'm going to go get that red sports car. I'm going to ditch this minivan. Like this is about me. And all of a sudden you see that red sports car everywhere. That is because you trained your filter to see it. There's not more. You're just now
You're
including that
seeing it. Yeah,
information.
exactly.
And so those questions that you ask yourself every morning determine what state you will find yourself in for alignment. So I didn't realize for a long time, but I was literally waking up like, what do I need to do? Where am I behind? What email did I forget to send? Did I upset anyone yesterday? Like this audit of stressful things. right? Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever tapped into that or noticed that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially as women who, in this phase of life, a lot of us will wake up even in the middle of the night between 2 and 4 a.m., and that's where our brains go to right away. And then we're up for, hours at a time. So, absolutely, I experienced it myself, and it's very common, unfortunately, as we go into perimenopause and menopause. So, yes. And it's interesting about the theta because also I do it before I go to bed too. So, the theta
Exactly.
state,
Best times. Theta,
exactly. So,
theta
before,
is just as you wake and as you go to bed. And
yep.
now let's just take what you just said, because this is really powerful reframe. This does happen more as we get into perimenopause. We do wake up more as we get into this place, unfortunately. Or it's like our inner nervous system, our intuition, whatever you feel comfortable calling it, is like, I am here. This is your wisdom time, and I am your guide. So listen. And if you don't listen during the day, I'm going to make you listen in the night. So, what if we can carve out these micro doses of connecting with her, of listening to her, of not being afraid that maybe what she has to say is like really shitty to hear? But it's her. She's our guide. She's our friend. We haven't listened to her in 30 years. Like, no wonder she might be like, listen, I have something to tell you. And you're going to hear it like this.
And the 2 to 4 a.m. is when nobody else is talking and there's no other stimulation, right? So that's the only time that she'll be like, oh, now you're going to listen.
It's the
So
only time she can fit in.
it's the only time, exactly. So, no, that makes sense. And actually, that is backed by research too, because we do know that the number one reason we're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m. is because of stress. So it's because of our nervous system. So that actually, we in our anxiety survey, we found that as well. So, okay, so let's go back to theta for a second. So we wake up in the morning, and by the way, I do this every single morning. And what I'll do as well is, so I like what you said, you're listening to the questions, but what I'll do is I will also say my mantras. I will also do some clearings, like in that theta state when I'm kind of awaking, but I'm not fully awake. I'm not on my phone. I will start saying things about my day in a positive way. So why don't we give some examples of what women can do before they go to bed in that theta state, but also when they wake up so that they can help get their nervous system in alignment.
I love that. And I would bet from my lens, that's why you have been able to self regulate. Like what you're doing is you are taking your theta time, which is the gateway to our subconscious. We all want to be time efficient. You get twice as much done in half the time when you're doing this work in theta. When you anchor your day with it, you've done it. You've done the work and you're feeling the benefit.
Oh, and by the way, I actually look forward to it. Like I really love it. Like so for our community, so we have a product, so we have supplements, and one of the supplement or two of the supplements is our Morphus Magnesium and our Morphus Sleep Us. And when a customer purchases any of our products, we send them an email. And in the email, it's not just like, here's how to take the supplement. I also love to give examples of what we could do outside of even that supplement. How could we do more to help the supplement work even better? And one of the things that I recommend is doing a mantra. So I'm very big on Ho'oponopono. I don't know if you've heard of Ho'oponopono. Okay, so I'm very big on Ho'oponopono. So when women are waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., and I'm guessing this is probably helping with aligning our nervous system as well, but it's this ancient healing modality that comes from Hawaii. And it's 4 lines. It's I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. So I always tell the women who purchase these supplements, when you wake up between 2 and 4 a.m., start saying that mantra. Just repeat it over and over again until you fall back asleep. And it works. And it's because I've learned to regulate my nervous system throughout the night. And another thing that I will tell our women is because our brain is a muscle, don't even start to like use it during the night. So you're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., shut it down before it even starts to move. Because I had gone through some very stressful times over the years. And this is how I started. And it's funny, I never really thought of it this way, Melissa, but now that you're talking about it and you're like, you've learned to do this, it's like, I just did it because I had to find something that worked because not sleeping wasn't an option for me. So coupled with these incredible supplements that I'm like, okay, it helps me get more deep sleep, more REM sleep. Like it works amazing with the research behind that, coupling it with that mental like our mental work and mental exercise has been a complete game changer. And now that when I'm listening to you, I'm like, okay, so that's probably what it's doing is it's working together in tandem, helping to reset my nervous system so that I could fall back asleep quickly. And that's what I share with our community all the time. So I'm loving this conversation too. Like, I love what you're saying. I did it. You're right. It was like so subconscious, but like it works.
And what's so beautiful, I mean, I know that your following understand this about you, but I want to also just help remind them like this is a very powerful practitioner that you have at as a resource because you're not only sharing a beautiful, crutch in your product, and we all need a crutch at times because if you're living up here, I mean, you can't access that mantra in that time. When we are like spinning, when I was really sick with Lyme, like I couldn't just use these tools. They wouldn't have gotten me there. I needed major hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I needed ketosis and fasting and supplements. So it's the crutch, but you're not just standing there saying, buy my product. You are standing behind your product and being like, this works really well to help support you and pair it with this. This is some knowledge and something you can use from the outside. And this is how you can ignite what's within. This is the wisdom. And these are my favorite kind of women to align with because this is how we win. It's not either or, it's both. Right. And this is how
Oh,
we
it's completely because, and I don't look at it as a crutch. I look at it as something that our body needs because we don't make melatonin as much as when we're in menopause. Like we need to get it from some other places because as you and I both know, I mean, unfortunately our food just doesn't have the minerals that it had, years ago. So things are changing all the time. So for me, I'm giving ourselves what we need physically and mentally.
yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, that's amazing. I love it.
So,
No, it's
so
great.
important. Okay, so going back when you said, can we give them like a mantra in this theta time? So just to remind everybody, theta is theta, and then the next gear that we're going to talk about, gear two, is alpha. This is a brainwave state that like the best of the best meditators sit down in meditation to aim to achieve. And we wake up in these gears. We wake up in these states. And as long as we don't go on our phones and in white or blue light, we stay in them. So let's use them. And so your question about like, how can they have a mantra? Let's go back to that word of the previous alignment: stress, anxiety, chaos, right? Busyness, and tap into the questions, that you're starting to hear. And what's so powerful for women to take some time to do, maybe in their theta or alpha time, is like, how do I want to feel? Not necessarily what do I want to do in my life and what do I want to have, but like, how do I want to feel? What are those wishes of those things, like the dream house or the great relationship or that vacation with my family? Like, what is it that I really want those for? Like, what feeling would they create? And this is really powerful work. Anyone who studied Joe Dispenza, like, this is how manifestation and creating, the life of your dreams really works through a nervous system lens. He's also a chiropractor. Define that word and make that your new state of alignment. So mine is play. And
Mm.
anyone who follows me, I play all day. I'm microdose play. I work really, really hard. But you will see me doing gymnastics, doing handstands, up on the bars, on my bike, running around with my kids. I just did a 30-day play challenge, 2 minutes of play. Like, I play all day.
I love
And
it.
so the reason that this is an important step in answering your question about their morning mantra is this is where we have that tool, right? When we're lost and we're in chaos and you go to I forget how to say it, Hana,
Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono, like, give me a tool in that moment, right? Give me something to lean on. So when I've got what email, what blah, 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 nope. Where can I find joy today? With all I have going on today, how can I create space to have fun and be in my body? And that becomes my filter, right? And walking through your mantra and
Yeah.
exercise, your filter becomes regulated nervous system. Whatever feeling you create in theta is the feeling that you will create throughout the day subconsciously. So it's super powerful. So I tell my women in my community, don't get up until you've switched it. And it doesn't have to take long. I'll think about how can I have fun today? And like all of a sudden, I'm not stressed about the emails. They're still all going to get done. They have to. But I'm like, oh my God, I get to rock out to Aerosmith on the car ride to school with my kids. Maybe that's all I got. Like, I don't have time, but like, oh, I love that song, Dream On. And I go into my day in that state and I lock it into my hardwiring. So it's easier to find.
I love it. I do I have these I love angel cards. and I love doing my angel cards. And when I'm not in alignment, my angel cards will be play, have more fun, or get into nature. So, and it's constantly reminding me. So I like that you said that your word is play because it's so true. Like we tend to get caught up in what we're doing in our lives and we forget about certain things like joy, like happiness, like play, things that make us more aligned and help our nervous system, right, to regulate better. So that's I think it's a great word, and I think that a lot of women, if you know, if you're forgetting to play a little bit or a little bit more than you'd like to, maybe it's making time for ourselves. And I also like that you're saying that it doesn't have to be a long time. It could be like you're in the car, it's a 3 minute song, and that's your play in that moment, and feeling it and really enjoying it while you're doing it. And it doesn't have to be for 2 hours straight.
I write one of my ways to play, I did it 3 times this morning, is a 2-minute bike ride in my neighborhood. So it just resets. And, I always like to blend the soulful with the science because for any woman that, struggles, like, oh, this sounds great, but it's just another thing. This is science.
Mhm.
And so this is, your expertise too, as a hormonal expert. Like we can look at the bottom of the chain, as a chiropractor, I like to go to root cause, right? So I'll say it this way. We can look at the outsides of the tree, the stem, the leaves, the hormones, or we can go more in towards the root. And cortisol and insulin play a huge role in how our hormones flourish, right? And so we can either treat the hormones, which is important. We can work with our hormones, which absolutely is important because I tell you what, if I'm feeling something intense, like it definitely helps. Or we can go to the root of the tree. And what comes before all of that in the hormonal hierarchy is oxytocin. And so in the age of information, as a woman who runs a wellness center that has functional medicine labs, right? As I have every tool that people come to us to pay to use, you can simplify the situation by simply focusing on oxytocin. And oxytocin is through play. And so if
Mhm.
you're like, okay, now I've got my cold plunge and my sauna and my light and like, God, I got to run my labs, or I could just play because that's the top of the chain and that's going to help everything else flow
And
better.
it's free.
And it's free. And like with all the information we now know, thank God about our hormones because oh my God, I can't even imagine how our moms went through this process without knowing. But like let's do both. Like let's understand that in addition to getting our labs run and stuff, one of the most important and powerful things you can do is hop on your bike for 2 minutes. I will tell you, as a woman who lost myself through Lyme disease and mold toxicity and like didn't know my own children's names that I was homeschooling. Like, can we bring this concept home? That it wasn't those tools that got me better. It's these, these are so incredibly powerful.
Mm. Okay, so we've got the theta tip. I'm going to call it the theta tip.
Theta tip.
Theta tip. What would be another tip that we could do that we could use?
So then gear two is alpha, and alpha is flow state and present time consciousness. Alpha is our heart center. And so gear two, the most important gears are gear one and gear two, and the end of the day, I'll say. But alpha is our flow state, and I call her the connector. And
Mm.
so the next phase is you want to connect with yourself, and or this is the place and space for like connecting with your loved ones. So as a mama of three, I get up a little bit early no matter what so I can get in theta. And then in my alpha time, they're joining me, but it's super low key, right? So alpha, this is kind of where we take all that we heard in the theta, and this is a great place for journaling. This is where we might, start some self-discovery that might be a little bit uncomfortable, but like this is our discernment phase of our life. I hated that lunch yesterday with the girls because I don't want to be around this person at work anymore. But like this can be a total dump. You can rip it and burn it, but like this is where we give a voice to our inner self. This is also a really important step before the next phase, beta. I want to talk about beta for a minute, and then I'm going to go back to like action steps in alpha. Beta is gear three. She is our marathoner. She is our go-getter. This is like the phase that many of us live in. And we could consider her like our 9 to 5er. But none of us work the 9 to 5 anymore. Anytime you're on your phone or screens, you are in beta. So you think about, is that just 9 to 5 anymore? And so what's really important is, spending some time in alpha before we push to beta. But if you are a woman who struggles, like I have and I do, to slow down beta, to be like, okay, I need to pause before I start thinking about all the emails. Like it's still a flex for me every day. We can activate those mirror neurons that we talked about earlier in the conversation. And we can like kind of hijack our nervous system in a good way by looking at a flickering flame. And so when you look at a flickering flame like a candle, mirror neurons in your brain are activated and they will match the frequency of that flame. And that frequency of the flame is the same as the brainwave alpha. And so if you're trying to do your morning time and you're struggling, or if you're feeling anxious or stressed, staring at a flame is like one of the best cheats to get you into alpha. So I use that a lot. I call this my sit spot. My sit spot is right behind me. Like in the morning, I saunter out of bed before I'm awake and I sit down here and I do my theta. And then I've got a candle. You can actually see it right there, that I light in times when I need it. And so, this is, I think, real tools for the real woman. And we're not just sitting here and saying, do your gratitude practice and do your journaling, but like not really going into the realistic challenges of what that is. And so when we can carve out 5 minutes of alpha time in the morning, it leads to peak performance later in our day. So again, alpha is our flow state. It's where time disappears and we're completely present with the person in front of us. And last thing on that, you think about romantic restaurants have a candle in the table. I'm like, did they know that? Like, I want to ask, was that to get us into flow state and open our hearts, or was that by accident,
Oh, that's really cool. And if you don't want to light a real candle, you can Google or go on to, YouTube and look at burning flames. So it doesn't have to be an actual candle, right? So if you have,
Yeah, and I'll actually do that. Like if our house is really hectic. So our one of the biggest things I changed in my life was the way that my morning looked. So it went from like coffee, I still have coffee, probably earlier than I'm supposed to. But I love my coffee. It's a ritual. So it switched from having coffee and going to CrossFit and being under bright lights to our entire home is in alpha in the morning, even if just for a few minutes. And so if my kids are like really wound up and really wired, I will put on the fire YouTube channel or the ocean YouTube channel. And I'll put on some music and I keep our house really dimly lit until the sun is out. And
yeah, it just takes it
our
down.
whole house just feels like that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And even TVs have settings now that you can put them on those channels, so it's great.
Mm.
And it just helps you to relax. It's interesting because what you were saying earlier that when you don't listen, and I remember Oprah talked about this years ago, that you'll get a little sign and then it'll be a pebble and then it'll be a stone and then it'll be a brick and then it'll be like, so listening to our bodies is so important, but yet it's so hard for so many of us, like you said, because we're busy and we have so much on our plate and we're always doing things. So carving out that little bit of time I think is so important. And I love the term that you're using, the microdosing, because it makes it sound so much easier. Because
Mm.
when we think about it in terms of like, oh gosh, got to go meditate. And like, so for me, I just to sit and do nothing and meditate for me for 20 minutes, that's it just, I just don't love it. Right. But I interviewed Lisa Borden and she talked about unmeditation. And unmeditation is walking through a forest or just being alone with your thoughts and sitting and journaling. And I'm like, that is what I love doing. I unmeditate because for me, that seems easier to do and it's something and I love journaling. I've had a journal since I was in grade 3. So I love journaling. I love writing things down. And I also love what you were saying about how you could write things down, you can dump, and then you could tear it up and burn it. Because some of you might be thinking, well, I don't want to be negative. I don't want to have negative thoughts because that's going to beget negative energy and negative outcomes. So, but it's okay to be with your thoughts and it's okay to dump those feelings. It's okay to be realistic. And then what you could do is, okay, you've got it out and you're like, okay, so now I'm ready to let it go. It no longer serves me. Those are old programs perhaps. So, or tearing it up and burning it might be a little bit harder, but maybe tearing it up and maybe, you know, throwing it away, whatever it is that makes you, but it's okay. And I don't want you to feel that you're a negative person just because you might have some negative thoughts one day. And I think that's an important distinction that people need to understand.
I agree. Thank you for saying what you said about meditation because I think that's a lot of us, right? Like we have our big outside self-care tools. And then, when it comes to like spirituality and trying things different, I think some of these tools just seem really inaccessible for us. I'm not a type A, but I'm a type B or C. But I am a go-getter, right? I don't need everything to be really organized, but I am go from the minute I wake up. And meditation was always really hard for me.
Yeah.
But meditation essentially means to become familiar with. And so to me, this is really about becoming familiar with the most important person in our lives instead of everything and everyone outside of us. This is about learning to hear that voice of what's not working so that when we're worried about everyone we're disappointing, we start to consider us.
Mm.
This is about becoming self-with and getting to create those inner anchors so that we can find them later in the day. Like, no wonder we can't ground ourselves from within when we don't even know who we are. And
Yeah.
I have a book coming out with Hay House next year, and I have this whole chapter on, our inner voice, and she's pissed off, and rightfully so. I said it a little while ago, but think about, for eons, we as women followed our intuition as our guide, right? Like that was how, there's the red tent. Women were
Mm.
encouraged
Love
to
that.
go into this place and space during the bleed because this is our highly intuitive time, and they would come out and they would lead the community. They would solve the challenges of the community. So our intuition was our guide. So think of it like a girlfriend, right? She is like your guru, and you live this life together. And so think about like in our lives, like our girlfriend that we meet for coffee, or our girlfriend that we call when we're struggling, or that we go on a walk with. And then all of a sudden we just stop showing up. We stop listening. Like we don't tell her why. We just disappear. And so like what if we looked at our intuition like that and like think about that girlfriend? She would be really sad, she would be really hurt, she would be upset. But once we can reestablish that relationship, like, I'm sorry I left you. Like, I'm here to listen again. Like, you were always my guide. Let's do this again together. Let's stop trying to power over. She's our ego. Let's stop trying to power over our ego. These masculine books and spirituality, let's get beyond our ego. Let's power over our ego. Let's partner with her. And let's do this the feminine way and ignite power from within. And that's what we do. We team up. We become best friends with that inner voice again. And this is the movement that we all need and deserve as women.
I love it. And I'd love to have you back on once your book comes out
Mm.
because I think that it would benefit a lot of I mean, our listeners. I think they would absolutely love it. So, and did you know when it comes out next year? Do you have a date?
It will be pre-order, I think, very early in 2026. So probably about January.
Nice. Okay, amazing. It's such an important topic, and I'm sure it's one that we could talk about forever because and I think this isn't like I said before, like this is such an interesting way to approach it, which is from much more from a spiritual standpoint and which is very much in alignment with who I am and my beliefs are. So thank you, Melissa. Like I'm super happy that we had this conversation today. Is there anything else that you didn't share that you would want to share or want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I will just say, there are the other gears and the way to work through your day. And I've got a free resource for them. And I've got some episodes and things they could find on my platform for anyone who wants more information. And the biggest message I think that's important to me to share is just reminding them like, you are your own best guru, you are your own best teacher and healer. You think about the people in our lives, whether they're our best therapists or best friends that we go to for advice, like really the best ones are simply the best listeners. Like we have it all. And it's time in the age of information and knowledge to get back to that wisdom. And the way is through the nervous system.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And can you just share what your social, I mean, it's underneath. If you're on YouTube watching this, you could see it here. We'll also put them in the show notes, but if you could just share it for those listening on the podcast, how they can.
Yes, absolutely. So Instagram is Be Inspired Mama, Mama, and it's not just for moms. We are all caretakers as women, so it's Mama. And then I've got a podcast with the same name. And then my book is called The Connection Code, that'll be out with Hay House next year. And lastly, my website, drmelissasaunders.com, has all my freebies and resources on it.
I love it. Thank you for doing this today, Melissa.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Andrea.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Melissa as much as I did. I love that she reminded me to talk more about spirituality because it is a big part of my life, but yet I just don't talk about it that much with my guests on the podcast. So I'm going to do more of that in the future. If you enjoyed it, please share it because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to rate and review it so that more people can listen to our incredible experts. Thank you for spending the last little bit with me. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but instead, you chose to spend your time with me, and for that, I am grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.